All good. So, the program that I'm running now is called Adobe Audition. This comes with the Adobe Suite. If you're to get that, After Effects, Premiere Pro. Audition is one of those programs in the Adobe Suite, and it's designed specifically for sound editing and mixing and things like that. So I did a couple of tutorials. What was it? I guess it was about a month ago, maybe a little longer than that, to go over some basic sound concepts. And today we're going to be putting those to use, as well as introducing some new concepts and kind of combining them all into one big sound design tutorial. So, the first thing that you'll notice here is that I've got a whole lot of tracks. Let's go ahead and rename these just so we can keep track of them. These are my cymbals from the drum kit. These are my toms from the drum kit. This is my kick drum. This one is my snare. This is the bass guitar. This is the rhythm guitar on the right signal of the stereo, and this one is the rhythm on the left channel. This is lead guitar 1 and lead guitar 2. These are tubular bells. Bells, spelled that correctly. This is the organ. And this is a choir track that I haven't finished really working on yet. Okay, so you might be asking, why do you create a separate track for each one of the drums on your kit? Why are you separating the snare from the kick drum and the toms from the cymbals and so forth? With drums, especially when it comes to equalization, you never want to mix those on the same track. The reason for that is that the kick drum inhabits a very different space, a very different set of frequencies than the snare drum does. And when you apply an EQ onto your drum kit that brings up, say, some of those bass frequencies, it's not going to sound very good on the snare drum. You don't want to boost those frequencies on the snare drum at all. You want to boost a totally different set of frequencies. So that's why, and I'll go into that a little bit more talking about equalization in just a minute, but that's why you want to separate each one of your drums on different track. You really don't want to boost any of your bass frequencies on the cymbals. That is going to sound awful. So you definitely want to track each one of the drums and cymbals on different tracks so that you can put different effects on them that won't affect the other part of the drum kit. A few more kind of precursory things here. This second guitar part, I haven't had a time to actually record that myself. So is this just a placeholder for the time being? I'll go ahead and play it back and you'll hear what I'm talking about. You hear that? Some of that like weird... It's because I pitched it. So this is literally the exact same part for these two sections here as the lead guitar 1. I just pitched this up in order to be a harmony part, but that's not going to stay. I will eventually just re-record that, but I have very limited time to do recording, so there are only certain days of the week I can do that on. So eventually I will record this separately. When it sits in the mix, you might not be able to tell, but I will eventually record that. Another thing to go over real quick. I have my rhythm guitars split onto 2 tracks, and one of them is coming out of the right channel and the other's coming out of the left channel. And you might be asking, why do you do that? Let me show you. Well, I may not be able to show this to you exactly the way I want to, but these are actually two different recordings. So this track here was recorded separately from this track. They are not exactly the same thing. They are played on almost, very, very, they're played very tightly together, like almost exactly on the same beat, but they aren't exactly the same. And the reason you want to do that is because this will just come out of the right channel. So you have that and this. They're very close to the same, but they're not exactly the same. You might also notice that they have slightly different tones. The reason you do this is that you want that very slight variation between the two, panned hard left and hard right, because it makes it sound a lot bigger. If you just take one track of guitars and let's just say I did one recording, and I put them onto separate tracks and pan them hard left and hard right, but they're exactly the same guitar part, that is literally no different than just turning the volume up. You're just repeating the same thing, and by doing so, it would be the same as keeping it on one track, but just turning the volume up higher. And that's not the sound you're trying to achieve. What you're trying to achieve is a bigger, fuller sound. And in order to do that, you need to play them separately so that they do have that very slight variation in the recording, and that will make it sound like there are like tons of guitars playing or multiple guitars playing versus just one that's been turned up louder. And it's a very different character that you're creating with that sound. So that's why I always a lot of bands will actually record the guitar part 4 times, and they will split that between the right and left channels. But it's actually four different recordings with the slight variations. That sounds really huge, and it works for certain kinds of music, but it isn't as tight. You don't get that tightness, that like real slick, like perfect timing kind of sound. So when you do it with 4 guitars, 4 different recordings of guitar, that is, you can't get quite as tight with the beat. So I think that the perfect I don't know what you call it, the perfect compromise for that is to record it twice so that you get that bigger sound, but you can also edit your music and make it feel much tighter. And that's kind of the style I go for. I really like djent music or progressive rock, and they spend a lot of trying to get that kick drum and that bass guitar and that rhythm guitar in perfect synchronization with each other, so you get that real tight bum 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 bum. And so usually when you track it with 4 guitars, you can't really get as tight with that sort of thing. Okay, so that's why I've done that. You also, talking about the tones, so I have kind of 2 different tones on this, and that helps to kind of shape the character of the guitar as well. So that's why I do that. Again, if you guys have any questions about anything, feel free to ask me, and I will try to answer them for you if you're not able to follow along, or if you're having, if you're having trouble following along because you're not familiar with the concepts I'm using, the terms. Okay, so let's go ahead and give a listen to this. I haven't touched this at all. So this is basically, there's no EQ done to any of this. I mean, there is a little bit done to the guitars, the bass guitar and rhythm guitar and lead guitar, because I had to create those tones in Cubase. But I'm going to be doing all of my balancing and equalizing, compression and that sort of thing here in Audition. And there's the reason why I do that, well, it's kind of hard to explain without having Cubase open, and I can't run that and broadcast at the same time because it's using a different sound driver. Anyways, maybe I'll save that for another time. We'll just keep this simple for the time being. But let's go ahead and have a listen to this, and you guys will see where there's some work that can be done. Okay, I let it play a little bit there after the guitar parts stopped, just so that you'd be able to hear how you could not hear at all the organ in the background. Like, if you're listening to that, obviously right now our problem is that the rhythm guitars are far overpowering the rest of the music. So I think I have found the tones that I like for the guitars and the bass guitar and stuff. I might do a little work on them, you know, as time goes on. But I think I found basically the tone I want to use. So now we need to work on balancing this stuff. Here's the problem, that we're getting even. I mean, it's not quite. It's not. When you see this part on the bottom, you see how it comes all the way up to this red here and creates this red when the line comes all the way up here? That means that the signal that's coming through is, there's no headroom. It's basically clipping, and clipping is where the sound is so loud, basically, that it becomes distorted. Right? Now we're not getting it very much. I would say that we are going less than half a decibel over our threshold here, which is acceptable, especially in this style of music, metal and things like that. Like, you're mixing very distorted sounds anyways, and it's all supposed to be very loud. So if you're getting, I would say if you get up to about, you know, 0.5 or maybe even just 1 decibel over your threshold in metal music, it's okay. However, so we're at the volume we want to be at. We don't just want to turn our guitars down because we have reached the volume that we want to reach with them. The problem now is being able to bring the other instruments up without taking our signal way beyond that threshold. We don't want to boost this to where it's going more than 1 decibel over our threshold, because then you're going to get a lot of crackling in your speakers and distortion, and it's going to sound real ugly. So the challenge is to bring the other instruments up while not going over that threshold. And so I'm going to teach you some techniques and show you how you can achieve that. Now, the first thing I want to do is I want to make the drums come up to the level where I want them to be. In this style of music, the kick drum is very important. The kick drum needs to be really loud, because that's what's going to drive your well, the techniques, the picking techniques that you're using on your guitars. So palm muting, for instance, is a picking technique that you use for a rhythm guitar, where you put your palm down on the strings a little bit at the bass and you pick, and it gives you that, well, let me show you exactly what I'm talking about. So let's solo the rhythm guitars here and listen to, like, this is an open pick of the strings here. We just let it ring. Oh, actually, that's not a good example. Let's try this. So that's very open. But when you palm mute, it sounds something more like this. So you get that like chugging sound, chunk, 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 chunk. That's what's called palm muting. In order to emphasize and drive that palm muting, you want your kick drum to be really loud and to be hitting on the same beats. Bum, 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 bum. Chug, 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 chug. And that really kind of like kicks you in the gut, you know? So in order to do that, we need to bring our kick drum up. Now, if we zoom in here on our kick drum, you can see that we have some room to go. Now let's take a look at this wave file. So here's the wave file. And the way, like this, each one of these little, like, well, I guess you just call them waves, is when the kick drum hits. So you see it hit really hard here, 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 and here. Now we can boost this a little bit. See all this room, all this, you know, green space above and below? We can boost this all the way up to where it hits hard green here. When it hits the hard green, that means it's going to be clipping. So we have some room to raise this. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's raise it by like 3 decibels, right? And then let's listen. Whoops. I was not doing what I thought I was doing. Let's solo the kick drum and the rhythm guitars. Let's see if we can find a balance that we like. So this is, you know, the first part, I guess, of mixing is you have volume control, which are measured in decibels or dB. And in Audition, it allows you to boost up to 15 dB over here on like all this channel settings. But then you can also boost it right here by another 15 dB. So it gives you 30 dB extra, which is really cool. Cubase does not let you do that. Cubase only lets you boost by 6. So that's another reason why I like mixing in Audition versus in Cubase. But let's go ahead and listen to this. It's getting a little closer. Let's try boosting it by another 3 dB. Getting close, but you see it clipped there a little bit. So on, I guess there, and that's probably a mistake that I made in editing this. For some reason on every, like, this hit is louder than these, and I don't know why that is. That's probably something I'll have to fix when I go back into the MIDI in Cubase. But you can see there's one here, 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 and here. For some reason, these are louder than the others. So what I'm going to do about that, undo what I just did, is I'm going to take those individually. Well, I can't really do that here, actually. Let's pull this up and actually grab this and lower it so that it's relatively the same as the others. That way we won't have to deal with that problem. Here's one over here. Yeah, so when I re-export these from Cubase, I'll have to make sure I go through and lower these specific kick drum hits so that they're not blowing us away like that. Let's see, there's one over here. And a couple over here. It looks like there's one here actually. This one's a little louder than the others for some reason. Bring that back a bit. Okay, now we should no longer have that problem. It should all be basically the same volume. Okay, let's go back to our multi-track here. So, now. So that sounds like a pretty good level for them. Like they're coming almost all the way up, but not quite clipping here. They're not going into the red. So let's listen to that with the whole mix together and see if we can hear those kick drums better. Now compare that to where it was before. Let's take this back to 0 and listen. You can hardly hear them. But we raise that by 6 decibels and all of a sudden so that is the most basic form of sound editing, where you just raise the volume, take the decibels up, and get them to be at about the right volume in comparison to each other and get a really balanced mix. Now the second thing is EQ, or equalization, and I've talked about this in a previous tutorial, but let's go over it today. We want this kick drum not only to be louder, but we want to change the character of the sound a little bit, right? So let me show you what I mean. Let's solo this layer. So this is what it sounds like on its own. Okay, so that's what the kick drum sounds like. It's dry on its own. Hold on, I just got a comment from Simon X. I'm going to read what it says. Hey man, I'm working on a short film, but I'm really bad with the audio. What kind of music should I put in the background of a fight scene? I'll give you some quick advice on that, but then I'm going to get back to the tutorial here. So fight scenes are interesting because with fight scenes you have lots of punch sound effects, right? Like the boom, boom. A lot of that like low frequency response. Well, I guess with face punches you get some high frequency too, with kind of like the slap, like. But fight scenes, at least in my experience, they can kind of like, they can be tough to put with music, especially with heavy percussion, because the punches and kicks themselves sound very similar to the drums. And so when you got this heavy dun 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 kind of like music going on in the background, your punches and kicks will kind of throw off that music a little bit, or at least it will sound that way because they're coming on different beats and things. So for a lot of the fights that I have done as a sound designer, what I like to do is build up to the moment of the fight with music. If there's a chase beforehand, or if there's some really intense dialogue and the characters are getting really mad at each other, you know, you build and build and build your music up to a climax right before the fight happens, and then you just take away almost all sound aside from the punches and the kicks. And I think what that does is it builds to the climax of the moment. Like this, things are getting really intense, and then once the fight starts, you just like slam hard with the punches and kicks and make that audio just like take over, and the grunts, you know, and I think that that's really effective. It really makes the fight sound more intense, if you can believe it. To not have sometimes that won't work, but in my experience, and if you watch some of my videos with fight scenes in them, especially recently, here's two examples. You can go watch our Warrior Lasky versus the Taxman Reloaded, so the second one we did recently, where there's a bunch of music playing. It leads all the way up to the fight, and then once the fight happens, all the music cuts out. Also in Skyrim Into the Void, we did a fight scene for the middle of the movie, where Dovahkiin is in the barn with this other magic wielder, and there's this music that plays, and then right up to when the fight happens, the music cuts out and you just get the sounds of the fight. So go watch those and listen to it and see maybe a little bit of what I'm talking about there, but that's what I like to do for fight scenes. Okay, back to this. So we're going to be putting an equalizer on almost all of these tracks. And what an equalizer is essentially it allows you to edit a band of frequencies rather than increasing or decreasing the volume as a whole on a track. You can just increase or decrease the volume on specific bands of frequencies, right? Every sound has a wide range of frequency, unless you're talking about like square waves or something. The human voice, like you're listening to my voice right now, my voice has a wide band of frequencies in it. There are high-end frequencies and some low-end frequencies as well in my voice. And you can change the character or the tone of a sound by editing specific bands of frequencies within the sound file you're working on. So the kick drum is not the best example of this. I'll show you more what I'm talking about when we get to like the organ and the rhythm guitars and things like that. But you can really take what was originally a very flat sound and you can shape it into something very different just by using an equalizer. So for this kick drum, as you can imagine, we'd probably want to boost some bass frequencies there. So this line here, at the top of this line are the high-end frequencies. And on the bottom part are the low end or the bass frequencies. This is high pitch up here, low pitch down here, in other words. So with a kick drum, you get that booming sort of sound. So you can imagine that's more of a low end frequency. Somewhere within the 100 and 200 hertz, we will want to boost. And we'll just boost it by a little bit. Now listen to the difference between this, and then we'll turn this on. You're already starting to get some of that lower boom out of it, right? Now, what you can do is play it, and you can just move this around. There we go. See, that's the sound I really like. I don't like this. Right in here, though, I really like the sound of that. So that's where I want to boost. And you can do that in real time. So while you're playing, you can boost the frequency and move this around. And you can see how it changes the character of the sound. And this is a good way to find frequencies you don't like as well. So for our purposes, I'm probably going to want to take these not out, but see, I don't really like the way it sounds when I scoop here. That sounds a little too flat. It's not quite crisp enough for me. I like it. I like my kick drum to cut just a little bit. So that sounds good to me. So let's hear it with and without. Do you hear the difference in that now? Listen to that. So this is without. Just listen to the kick drum here. Now that really punches you in the gut when you got some of those bass frequencies in there, right? So that's what an equalizer does. That's the purpose that it serves. And now, if we come in here and we play this the way it originally was, so we were at 0 dB, no EQ on this. Listen to this. Now let's turn this on, boost this by 6, and listen to the difference. Now you really, really hear each and every one of those kicks. Bum, 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 bum. It's driving the song. It makes it sound way more intense. So that's what volume control and an equalizer can do for you. Now let's talk about one more thing that I like to do, and that is to use compressors. Compressors are really great for rock music. They're not so great in other kinds of music. And I want to illustrate why that is. Maybe I can open up Photoshop and do a little drawing and show you guys what a compressor actually does. So it's important to keep in mind dynamic range. Dynamic range in music, let me show you. I will show you a physical representation of what that means. We want a pen tool here. Where is the pen tool? I don't use Photoshop that much. Brush tool's fine, pencil tool, okay. Let's make this bigger than this, though. Well, a little less than that. Let's try 12. That's good enough. So, in music, music is measured in, well, we have these waves, anyways. We have these peaks, you know, get these waves, and, well, this is a bad representation. Let's have a line in the center. This will help. You get these waves, right, and they go basically kind of like this. And quieter sounds are small like this, and then louder sounds are big like this. Okay? So when we're talking about dynamic range in music, a song with or an audio file with large dynamic range means that, I guess we could put something on this side to help us represent too. Like this is 0 decibels. Let's say this is negative, well, I should probably put negative 5 decibels. Negative 5 decibels. Negative 10 decibels. Negative 20 decibels. Anyways, this is not a great graph. Don't pay so much attention to the graph I'm drawing. It's a crappy graph, but it'll illustrate the point. So 0 dB, that's where you're going to be clipping, right? If you have a wave file that goes because it's so loud, right? What's the Alt Control Z? You can step back one at a time like that. That's what clipping essentially is if you have a sound that's so loud that it's just like boosh, like way up here, boosh, like it's not even capturing a lot of that information. You see that? All this information up here is missing, and that's why it comes across as like crackling or you know, like a distorted sound, because there's a lot of the information missing from that. So when you're recording, you want to make sure you're not clipping. so that you're not missing any information and you can edit it all. But dynamic range refers to what's the difference between this point and the lowest point. So we have the loudest part of our sound up here and the quietest part of our sound down here. What is the range of this? That's what dynamic range refers to. And there are certain styles of music where you want lots of dynamic range. Orchestral music is a great example of that. You want to go from something being very soft, dun 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 dun. You have some strings, but then you want the whole orchestra to come in and be epic, bah, and you have the choir and everything's playing really loud. And you want a lot of variance in that, from between the quietest sound and the loudest sound, right? You can't really do lots of compression on a song with lots of dynamic range. And I'll tell you why. Because what compression does is it's going to take the loudest part of your sound and lower the volume down, depending on how much you are compressing. If you compress a little bit, it would take, well, we're just going to focus on, let's focus on this one, because I think this example over here is actually a little louder. So here's the peak, the loudest part of our sound. Here's the quietest part of our sound. Here's our dynamic range in between. By compressing, we would take the loudest part of the sound and we would decrease its volume, right? And what that's going to do is it's going to take this wave and make it look something a little more like this instead of like this. That's what compressing does. So you're saying maybe like, well, then why would you compress if it's going to make it quieter? The reason you do that is because now the dynamic range has changed. So our dynamic range is no longer this. It's more like this. Our dynamic range is very, very small. So the difference between the loudest part and the quietest part. Now, what will happen is if we boost the whole thing up, and we've taken everything that goes above this line, and we've brought it down, so this would look something more like this. This would look something more like this. We've taken all the sounds, we've brought them all down below this line. So we no longer, where's my erase tool? I need a bigger, much bigger than that. We've now taken all of our sounds that were above there and we've brought them down significantly, right? And what this allows us to do is it allows us now to take, where's my pen tool? I always lose the pen tool. I can never remember where it is. Pen tool, got it. Now we can take this line, this is the loudest part of our sound now, and we can boost that way up. And what that's going to do is it's going to raise everything higher, and even what was before a really quiet sound will now sound much louder. It'll be like up here. And so that makes the perceived volume of your your file much louder. Whereas before it was like the loudest part of the sound comes all the way up to here, but the quietest part is down here. It's like the quiet and the loud parts are much closer together. So you don't have a very wide dynamic range, and even the quiet parts have now been boosted. So it sounds, the perceived effect is that the whole thing is louder now after you've boosted them up. That works great for rock music where there's only one volume for the whole song. We're going full speed as loud as we can all the time. And that works fine because the perceived volume is always like right at the threshold. It's like bam, 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 loud all the time. And by compressing, what you're doing is introducing noise into the sound. However, you can't really hear that when you got guitars blazing, distorted guitars blazing all the time, and drums just boom, 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 and everything is just like super loud. You're not going to hear that noise that it's introducing. However, if you compress some orchestrated piece that has these real quiet piano parts and some quiet strings, and then it goes loud, during those quiet parts, there's going to be this ugly hissing and digital noise that is introduced into the mix. And so, depending on the type of music you're writing, compression can be very helpful or very detrimental. In a lot of modern music, where we're basically going at one volume the whole time, rock, pop, dubstep, all these styles of music that are supposed to just be in your face, drive really loud, is very helpful. But in more classical, styles of music, it is not. So that's what a compressor does, in essence. If you have any questions about that, if that's not a very clear example, let me know and I'll try to explain it again. However, with a multi-band compressor, we can choose to compress only certain frequencies, right? So if I don't want to compress the high end of this sound, I only want to compress the bass frequencies. That's what a multi-band compressor will allow you to do, which is really cool because you can keep the integrity or the character of certain tones within most bands, but just boost a very specific band, or compress and boost a very specific band of frequencies. So I'm not going to explain what all this stuff is that I'm doing. I'm just going to turn those to 0. I'm going to boost by a 2-to-1 ratio. Threshold -12. So basically, by saying the threshold is -12, that's where I'm starting the compression. Anything between 0 decibels and -12 decibels is being compressed. I could widen that to where it's like anything between 0 decibels and -30 decibels is being compressed, but that really doesn't sound very good. All of this stuff is going to be pretty loud, so it's all going to fit. I mean, it's like we were saying, we're trying to boost this almost all the way on its own to the peak. So these sounds are anywhere between 0 decibels and 12 decibels, most likely. There's nothing in this mix that's going to sit like very far below -12 decibels. It's all pretty loud. So I'm going to boost this by about, so it's compressing it down, but I'm going to boost it again by, let's just say 6 decibels for now. Now let's hear what that sounds like. Without, and then with. You get even more of that bassiness, that boosting, driving, kick you in the gut kind of feeling to it. So let's listen to the whole mix without first and then with. So that's really kicking me in the gut. I like that a lot. So I think I'm done with my kick drum for now. Now we are peaking a little bit, so I might want to bring this back by like, whoops, half a decibel or something. Whoops, that was not correct. 5.5, there we go. And we're still going a little bit. Let's go back to like 4.5. There we go. And now that kick drum is really, really, really powerful. I really like the sound of it at this point. It's loud, it's driving everything, and it's got a really nice bassy, just a really, really kick you in the stomach sort of feel to it. Now, if we want to enhance that feeling even more, we need our bass guitar to shine through. Now, at the moment, we can hardly hear it. Mostly what we hear is these rhythm guitars. There it is. But you can't hear it that well. And you can see its volume is not even close to getting up towards the peak. So we can boost this a little bit. Now, I could also do EQ and compression and everything on this, but I've already done that to create the tone in Cubase. So I'm not going to be doing any compression on my rhythm guitars or my bass guitar here in Audition, because I've already put compressors on them to achieve the sound and the tone that I wanted in Cubase. So for these instruments, I'm just going to, you know, boost them a little bit. Probably boost it by even another decibel. Now you're probably looking down here and you're saying, whoa, you're going way into the red. Don't worry about this yet. Right now, only worry about each individual instrument. We will be able to come down to the master, which is controlling all the tracks at once, and put effects on this as well. And that will allow us to keep that. We'll put a limiter on it, basically, which will make it so that it won't go over the threshold. Whoops, that's not what I meant to do. For the time being, just worry about the signals themselves over here in the left. So let's listen to it at 0 and then at +7, and you see if you hear the difference. Okay, it might be just a little bit too much. Let's back that off by 2 decibels. I like that. For the time being, because I am getting a little crackling in the speakers, I am going to pull this back by like 3 decibels just so that I can hear the clarity. Yeah, that's starting to sound really good. I really like the bassiness, the earthiness, the gut-wrenchingness of it. Now, here's another problem. We can't hear our snare drum very well. It's real, it's just this little like pop, pop, pep, pep. It's real weak. Now, let me give you an example of the style of music that I'm doing here and the tone we're going for. Let's look up a Periphery song. If you don't like Periphery, you know, I apologize. That's fine that you don't like them. But this is the sound I like, and this is the sound I'm going for. This will help illustrate to you what I'm trying to achieve. Listen to the snare and kick drum specifically in this. I forgot how weird this video is. Okay, so that's a good. That's enough at that point. You can hear kind of what I'm going for with this. So let's listen to my mix again. And you can already hear the muddiness in my mix, right? In comparison to that one, you see how crisp everything sounded in the Periphery song there? You could hear every instrument very distinctly from each other. Nothing really ran together. And in mine, you just get this really kind of muddy, you know, everything sort of blends together, and you don't get the crispness of each instrument. That's why mixing is so important. So you might have listened to this at the very beginning of the stream here and been like, "Oh man, that sounded really good." And now you can hear the difference between a professionally mixed rock, you know, song and just all of your raw files flat without any you know, editing or mixing done to them. Very different, a very different character in those two sounds. So yeah, let's start working on the snare drum a little bit here. So this is very flat at the moment. we don't have that much room to boost. We're getting up to about -9 decibels here. Well, I guess that means we can boost it by about, let's try 6. And I guess we can go up to 8. But I'm not going to quite go that far. Let's go to 6 for now because I am going to be doing some EQ on it. So that helps. We can hear it better now. But the problem is that it doesn't stand out. It doesn't have any power. So let's do a couple of things. First of all, let's do an EQ on it. And let's get it on its own soloed so we can hear it. And find the frequencies that we like. I like those frequencies. I do not like these. Let's go like right there. And take these out. Actually, no, let's not take them out. Kind of like that. And let's find another frequency we like. I actually like these frequencies right in here are really nice. I think that gives it a nice character. Maybe not a little, maybe not too much, but let's roll these off. Okay, so let's listen to the before and after. Let's pull the equalizer up here. Here, solo that. Here's before, and then after. Do you see how different the character is there? That's not a different snare drum. Like, that's the same sound, but an equalizer gives you so much power to change the tone and the character of those sounds. That's what an equalizer is for. And that's the power of EQ. You go from having a very flat to something very crisp and punchy. Okay, so let's also do a compressor on this. Multi-band compressor. We'll do the signal, same thing, -12 dB. That's just kind of where I like to start. And these frequencies, for the most part, are going to be up a little higher. So let's boost this by about 6. And we had some down here too, so let's boost these by 6. Now you can hear that compression, and compression is very noticeable in higher end frequencies. So you might be saying, well, I don't really like the sound of that. I like this better than this. But it's always important to listen to it in the whole mix first, because individually it might not sound as good. But listen to it in the mix. So this is without the compressor. So what you need to do is listen to that, and when it comes to tone and you know, sound, this is all very subjective stuff. So what sounds really good to one person might sound like garbage to another. And you know, there are some people that would listen to my guitar tone here and be like, that guitar tone sucks. But to me, I really like it. I really like the tone. And it's kind of the same way with when you're shaping these different sounds for the drums too. It's like some people might like that high-end crispness. Some people might like more of that middle to low-end kind of sound. It's all very subjective, but so you need to make that decision on your own. But here's another thing to do is adding reverb. I won't talk too much about reverb. I kind of have one that I like, and so I'll just kind of go with that. Let's see. Just gotta listen to it in the mix and see if you start to hear it here. Okay, I like it without the compressor. Just get rid of that. back this off a little bit. Whoa, 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 no. I might just back this off a bit too. Okay, that's starting to sound pretty good, but yeah, you kind of have to play with it like that, like be listening to it in the mix, going back and forth, seeing what you like. This reverb, I might want a little bit. Try 5. Okay, I kind of like that. I'm starting to like the way that sounds, so we'll move away from the snare for a while. Okay, now the other two parts we need to work on here are the toms and our cymbals, and then we'll be done with the drums. So let's take a listen to whether we can hear these toms or not. Very, 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 very quiet. Sounds like they have some reverb on them already. And that must have been carried over from Cubase. So what I'm just going to do is turn these up. See the... Could probably use another 2 or 3 dB on those. Whoops, I meant 8. Okay, see if that sounds like the mix. Okay, let's do an EQ on that because I'm not totally sold on the tone of those drums there. I want some more bassiness to it. Let's bring them right around here and maybe some more mids. Maybe some of the high end too. Kind of liked that for the bass. That was weird. I didn't like that very much. See what that sounds like. Now they're too loud. So let's bring them back to 5. Much better. Much better. I really like the way that sits. Let's see them over here as well. They have a little too much reverb on them, but that's something I'll have to fix elsewhere, because my native file brought that over from Cubase. Okay, so now we just need cymbals. I don't like to touch the cymbals in terms of... I don't like to compress them at all, first of all. Let me show you what that sounds like. Okay, cymbals are kind of difficult. If we bring up an EQ here, let me show you exactly where this sound is actually sitting. So we could bass or boost these down here. And you see how it's not changing the character of the sound at all? Cymbals have nothing down here. You can just completely get rid of this on cymbals and it will do nothing to them. See, it's right around here that you start to get some of that character to come in. Right around, what is this, like 785 hertz. Right? So let's bring this back and bring this back to 0. So we don't want to affect it from past there. But most of this sound sits up here in these frequencies. And I don't like to EQ cymbals at all. I find that it just sounds weird. So let's just take that off. But if you compress them, man, they sound terrible. Let me show you. Let's just boost them, or compress them in the areas where they actually sit. So let's come in here. I mean, that's basically just raising the volume, but if you compress much beyond a ratio of 2 to 1, this is a very low compression. You could compress this by like 5 to 1. You would start to get some really strange noise introduced. It just really taints the quality of the cymbals, so I don't like to compress them. What I like to do is just raise the volume. Let's go up to like 12. Okay, it's probably a little too loud. Let's just back them off to 10. That's a pretty good level there. Now, I am wanting to boost some of this a little bit. It's sounding just a little too muddy to me at the moment, the kick drum. Okay, I'm starting to like how the drums are sounding. I think that's about where I want to go with that. You can hear things much more clearly. So, we've got a pretty good balance between our guitars and our drum kit, but we still are not hearing the other instruments in the mix. The most important of all of these, in my opinion, would be the organ. See how it sits way down here in like negative 18 dB? We got to boost that by a lot. Okay, sorry. I just kind of had to listen to that for a second. That's starting to sound really, really good to me. I don't even know if I want to touch this organ in relation to an EQ. I think the organ sounds really good how it is. It sounds really clean and crisp. And I think it sits in the right place in the mix. I think that you can hear it very well. Well, let me explain this concept real quick. So what you want to do is when you're EQing the different instruments, you want to make sure you boost at different places. So for instance, our kick drum is down here, right? So we want the kick drum, if you want a really balanced mix where like the Periphery song I was showing you, where every instrument you can hear them distinctly, you have to use EQ to achieve that. And that means if I boost the kick drum down here, I'm not going to be boosting the bass guitar in the same spot. I'll boost the bass guitar in a different frequency so that they sit in different places along this line. And what that does is like, okay, this space belongs to the bass guitar, this space belongs to the kick drum, this space belongs to a different instrument, this belongs to my organ, this belongs to my lead guitar, this belongs to something else. And every instrument hopefully will sit in just a little different spot along this EQ. And what that allows you to do is boost them in ways to where they shine on a certain band of frequencies so that they can only be heard there and the other instruments are only heard in other places. And that helps you to achieve that balanced sound where you don't have sounds that are competing against each other. Does that make sense? So I'm listening to this though, and to me the organ seems to already sit in a pretty good place. It doesn't seem to be competing with the other instruments. Now, we can do this just for the sake of it. I mean, let's play through it and start boosting some frequencies and see if there's anywhere we can make this sit that will sound even better. See, that's really ugly. The organ boosting right here makes it sound very unbalanced. Hear the difference between that? When the organ is boosted here, it is totally competing with the rest of the music. Now let me pull it over and listen carefully to the difference. Okay, so we have a couple of other instruments here. We have a tubular bell. This is supposed to be a hit that happens. That classic JRPG tubular bell. If you grew up playing Square Enix games, or I guess at the time Squaresoft games, you heard that in almost every freaking OST they ever released when the bad guy comes around. So, in the mix, we're not hearing this very well. So let's boost it a little bit and see if that'll help. Sort of, but I think that we're going to have to run an equalizer on this in order to find where it sits and bring it out a little more. That was pretty good. Right in the middle. There we go. So we just boosted it kind of right in the middle. What was that at 728 hertz? Let's just make this 730 to be an even number there. And you can hear it better now. So before and then after. It's subtle. It's just a little bit, but it's enough to really kind of bring it out. Then we have our choir here, and the choir doesn't sound that good, but you know, it is what it is. It's the best you can really do with an automated, you know, a synthetic choir. Be nice if I could go record a real choir, but you know, don't have access to that. So this is the best we can get. So considering that's the case, if we want a choir in here, we certainly don't want to feature it. We don't want it to stand out because people will be able to hear that it's fake. So this is an example of one where it might help the overall sound bigger, fuller, and more epic. But if you feature it too much, it's going to sound really bad. So you kind of have to play with the volume on this and the EQ and see if you can find a good balance. Okay, overall that's sounding pretty good to me. I think that's a good level for the choir, where you can hear that there is a choir there, but it's quiet enough. You can't hear it distinctly enough to be able to tell that it's it's obviously a fake choir. I'm liking the mix overall at this point. I think it's sounding pretty good. There's obviously some stuff I can add to it. I could definitely add some more like lead guitar parts. Actually, there are some strings, or should be some strings, that I brought into here. There they are. Let's try these out and see what these sound like. Now, these are really quiet. They need some reverb. They definitely need some reverb on those. Need to make them sound like they're in a chamber rather than just sitting right next to them. Just give it a little subtle sort of a a beat behind it, and I might actually record that part, just kind of this sort of thing, on a lead guitar as well. And that'll really help to fill in the whole sound, make it sound really big. Okay, so I'm really liking the way that's coming together. Last thing I'll show you before opening up some Q&A or finishing the stream is that we can put a limiter on the master. So each one of these tracks, you know, obviously we're controlling them one at a time and applying effects to them one at a time, but you can also apply effects to the whole thing at once by putting the effects on this master track. Now you can do compression on this, you can do EQ on this, you can do all the same stuff, and you can really tone the final sound and change its character to whatever you want it to be, even after applying all those things to the individual tracks, which can be really powerful. I'm not going to do that for sake of time because I'm already really liking the way it sounds, but one thing we can do is put a limiter on this. And what this is going to do, I can actually change this back to 0 now, is it's going to make sure that we do not cross this threshold. Now you need to be careful. You hear what's going on there? It's really compressing the sound and change. Like, listen to this. Versus this. It's subtle, but you can kind of tell. You can kind of tell that it's cutting some of the information out. It's compressing it, and anyway, so you have to kind of mess with this. We don't want like a really heavy. That's going to do the same thing. I haven't really messed too much with limiters because that's what it does. I really like to just make sure I come in here and balance everything out on their own so that they're not peaking too much. But limiters can be helpful if you're close but not quite there. To, anyways, help you so that you're not, you know, getting into this red area, so that you're not going like a bunch of decibels over the top. But I might pull this back like 1 more decibel. And that's honestly pretty acceptable, even though it is probably going, I don't know, half a decibel over the limit, because it's all distorted sounds. It's electric guitar, distorted guitar, and so I'm not hearing any of the crackling or ugly distortion. And if you stay below +1 dB, generally, you know, you're going to be safe with this style of music. But that is something I will want to play with a little bit. I don't necessarily want a hard limiter. Light. Let's try light. Oh, it's still doing the same. Yeah, you can see how that's just not what I'm going for. So the hard limiter is not what I'm going for there. There was an option for this in the version of this software before Audition. It was called Sound Booth, where basically what it would do is it would just go through and take all the parts where it peaked, and it would just take those specific waves and just decrease the volume on them. And what that did was it brought all the volume so that nothing was peaking or going over the top, but it didn't actually compress anything. And I'm wondering if Audition has that same option or not. But I'm not sure. Let's try mastering here. That's not what I want. Anyways, you guys have any questions? Before I shut the stream down. Doesn't seem like it. Okay, everybody. I will be streaming again on Wednesday, starting at 11 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. And, yeah, I'll see you then. You can see this video again if you came in late or you missed some stuff at the beginning. I'll be uploading it to our music channel, Warrior Lasky Rock, on YouTube. So you can see it there. All right, thanks for watching. Peace.